So
That's
great.
the electronic lady.
That's right. Appreciate everybody joining. Do we have anybody that's new for one of these chats? Oh, okay. I see somebody waving there. Well, appreciate everybody joining. What I'm going to do is throw everybody on mute, and then we will go and start going here. 1 second here.
Who is it? You can see who raised their hands here.
1 second. Okay, so there was just somebody that didn't look like they belonged here that I was making go to the cornfield. So, anyways, appreciate folks joining. We're going to be talking about Photoshop and other tools you can use to restore your photos. I'll make the disclaimer that I tend to use the same, 5 or 6 tools in Photoshop 99% of the time. There's probably better ways to do the things that I do. If anybody is out there watching afterwards, if you would tell me if you can help save me some time and steps, I would appreciate it. But I got into this a number of years ago. My brother Jim and I had gone out to film on Scout Ranch in New Mexico. And over the years, he had lost his photos of the trip, and I said I would go make copies of mine. So I got a very small scanner at that time. It was called an HP PhotoSmart. Started scanning, and one of the things that I was horrified by was how many of the pictures had started turning red from the color dyes changing over the years. But it was also how many of them had dirt and scratches and stuff. So I was happily scan away, and then one day I saw an ad for something that could absolutely not be possible. Something called the Nikon's Cool Scan, and the claim it made was that it would take out dirt and scratches automatically, which was to me, oh, that can't possibly be. So I sent somebody sending one a slide, said, do me a favor, send me a back scan of it, and got it, and said, okay, now send me a cool scan. They are absolutely phenomenal tools. Let me do one other thing while I think about it. Let me just mute folks. If you need anything, you can raise your hand or wave frantically, and we will look for you. So the Cool Scan's a really neat device. Matter of fact, let me start here sharing screen, and I'll just pull it up. So share screen. Okay, this is the Nikon Cool Scan. They've made several different models of them over the years. This is the Cool Scan 5000. Slightly cheaper one was the Cool Scan 5. And basically, they do the same thing. The 5000 has a few more options and is a bit quicker, but it scans slides or 35 mil. It's strictly a 35 millimeter device. If you have other slides, films, and everything, it's not going to do you any good. You're going to have to go another route. I'll talk about that in a moment. The Cool Scan does it at 4,000 dots per inch resolution, which is very fine for just about anything you want to do. It gets to the point you can see the film grain, and it's really great in picking up details. Of course, that means it would pick up dirt and scratches and everything, but it has a way of fixing that. In this particular case, the device sticking out of the front of it is the automatic loader for film strips. The plastic thing leaning off to the side is where you put slides in. So if you go and buy the system, you could also get the gadget on the left-hand side here, which is a stack loader. Never got that because I tend to make changes to each and every slide as I scan it and not have the situation where this thing is doing 100 at a time and you don't get the right adjustments. You can also get a little device here, which you can stick a mal, uh, malformed piece of film, curling or anything like that, into the scanner and hold it down. These things are in demand right now. This Cool Scan is about 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. They sell now for the same or more than when they actually came out. Just for a point of comparison, this little gadget yesterday, somebody put 2 of them up for sale online for $60 each, and they sold within 15 minutes. So they're in demand, but you can get them. Nikon has stopped supporting them, but they do work under Windows 10. And luckily, there are 2 people in the United States that do excellent work on repairing them and cleaning them and keeping them going. So the Cool Scan is a great gadget. If you have other stuff you need to do, you might want to get a flatbed scanner to handle prints or sides, negatives of a different size. This is an Epson V700. The new one is the V800, the 850 Pro. But it works as you see here. You have a plastic tray. You put your strips of film into it, scans through it. It does a nice job. Not as nice as the Nikon in that it isn't quite as good in the dirt and scratch correction. It's also slower than the Nikon, but you can do something the entire size of this tray. So if you have an 8 by 10 negative, which you might have gotten somewhere along the line, or anything along the way, 4 by 5, 5 by 6, anything, it comes with a number of different mass plastic holders that you can use, or you can also just take one for a bigger one and then trim it down to make sure that it fits in there. Um, it's a good scanner. Epson also makes a V600, which is a less expensive part of the line. They really do a good job, and this is what I do all my prints on as well. So I mentioned the CoolScan does not handle that. So I will show you here. I will go change my screen share over to Photoshop. 1 second. Okay, let me get out of here. Stop share. Okay, I have to go and pick a different device. Screen share, and we will go to Photoshop. Hopefully everybody sees Photoshop now, and if not, somebody yell. Basically, I'm going to be using Photoshop CS6, an older version. I do have the newer version, the Creative Cloud versions of it, but I generally stick with 6 because 6, uh, it basically came in two different formats, a 32-bit and a 64-bit format, doing the exact same thing, but in the 64-bit format, you can go with a larger pictures, more memory in that. Some of the tools that I use were developed for 32-bit systems. There is a tool that you can supposedly get 32-bit plugins to run on a 64-bit system. Someday I will get to that. Right now I'm still using the same thing here. So I am going to open up Photoshop. 1 second here. I'm going to import from Nikon Scan. And we bring up the tools set here. And this is a scan. I am going to do a preview. I've done it already yesterday, but I'll do it again. So part of this talk will be about as exciting as watching paint dry. But you can see it's doing a preview scan. What it does is it does a real quick little scan so you can go off and you can change your cropping. You can change the image size, the resolution, brightness, colors, that sort of thing. So we get a particular scan that we want to go with. This is why Carol sees the back of my head all the time, because I'm always sitting here at the desk playing with the scanner. Okay, so it's come up with this image, which was the same as the cached one before, but you can do a whole bunch of different things with it, turning features on and off. Right now, I'm going to turn off the ice feature, which is the scratch and dust removal. I'm going to turn off any color correction, and I'm going to do a scan here. You'll be happy to know I pre-staged other examples that I'm going to use during the talk, so we're not going to have to watch this process over and over and over as we get to the other versions of it. And in this particular one, if you believe the Nikon marketing ad, it says it takes 20 seconds to give you a scan. So we have a scan here, which I am now going to get a one with the dirt and scratch correction on, so we can see a point of comparison and what the scanner does. So this one's going to take a little bit longer. It's really neat the way that it works. It's scanning for the picture with a visible light that we can all see, but it also sends an infrared beam through the scanner, through the film. It measures the way that infrared beam is detected, just like kind of a radar gun, how much of it gets through. If can determine if there's a scratch because too much of the infrared gets through, or it can determine if there's dirt, if there's too little of the infrared that gets through. It then uses the computer power to fill in those spaces, either filling in the dirt or the scratch or removing the dirt. That does a pretty good job. It does have some issues or limitations that we'll see. I've scanned this now with correction of color off. I'm just going to scan it one more time with color on, um, and you can see what the scanner does and why I generally do my color corrections by hand or inside the tool Photoshop instead of using a scanner. The scanner does a pretty good job on recovery of color, except on Kodachromes. It has some issues. And of course, 90% of the slides taken back at days of this, the 64 World's Fair, were Kodachrome. So it causes challenge. It also tends to get itself a little confused if it's doing stuff with a lot of blue in it. So if you have a water scene, somebody out on a lake with the water from the the lake looking blue, the sky looking blue, it tends to get itself confused and does some strange stuff. So let me get out of the scanner here, and we're going to take a look again. I have three different views: our original view, the color corrected view, and I'm sorry, the dirt corrected view, and the color one. Let me go back here to this first one, and I will go and flip between each of these at the same spot. If you look at this, you can see a bunch of scratches, both horizontal, vertical scratches. You can also see some dirt around where I'm moving the mouse right now. We can then look over and see what the scanner did, and oh goodness, the dirt is gone, the scratches are gone. But if you flip between the two of them, you can notice that there's a change taking place, that the image gets softer. It's one of the unfortunate downsides when you take out the dirt and scratches, it can soften it up like that. You can fix it by going off and using a tool called the unsharp mask. You can put some of that back. What you can also do, and what I'll do at times, if I have a picture that I really need to get some of the detail on, I'll take out the scratches and then you can come back to your original version of it and you can take your clone tool and you can grab parts of the image and you can put them back. So if I say, oh, I want to take this lady here and I want to grab her from this picture and I want to take her over to this one, I can come by and I can put her back at a sharper resolution. So if there's a particular detail or anything, that's easy to do. In a picture like this, I would probably not bother putting back all the individual flower beds as doing here, because most of us are not going to look at the picture at this amount of resolution. We're going to look at it, as something of a smaller size, and the issues are going to be taken care of. But again, this is the one that the system did a pretty good job cleaning up dirt and scratches. However, it doesn't get everything. Some of them are just too deep or too wide, and if it tried to do too much, it would go off and have issues with damaging other things that it passes through. In that particular case, Photoshop has an absolutely great tool, the healing brush. You pick a brush and get a certain size, and then you find the scratch, and you just run your mouse up over it, and you're done. Wait a few seconds, the scratch goes away. You can go through, let's see, I'm sure it's missed some others here somewhere. Well, let me go back over to the original, which has lots of dirt and scratches, so you can see what this tool does. If you want to get rid of the dirt here, again, you go over it with the healing brush and it magically goes away. The trouble is it does take a long time to do it. You can see here, it kind of screwed up the shadow where I went through it. You can get all your dirt and scratches out by cloning or the healing brush, but it really gets to the point of diminishing returns. If you get down in the bottom corner here, for example, look at all these little dots. You can go through and you can take out one by one by one. This is what, unfortunately, you have to do with black and white. Black and white, the digital dirt and scratch correction does not work under black and white because the silver in the black and white negative will bounce the infrared beam back and you end up with a god awful blur. So this is again where I tend to say, okay, for a picture like this with all these scratches up here, all this dirt and crap down here, I'm going to go over and use the cleaned up version and I can sharpen it up or do what I want. Let me go back to a larger view of this particular one. And Okay, I did not want to do that right there. Not 1 second. I'm going to fit this on the screen. And you can see in this particular case, let me go, let's see real quick one thing. Nope, don't want to do that. Okay, what I'm going to do here is if I look at this particular picture, it's kind of bright up here. I can come by and I can start making changes to the picture. And one of the neat things in Photoshop is you can make global changes. You can change the overall brightness, you can change the overall color, but you can also go through and grab selected portions of it. I'm not going to particularly take any of my shadows and brighten them up. If I do here, you can see some of the shadows change. This one doesn't have a lot of shadows, so it's not a lot. But take a look up here at the buildings of the African Pavilion. As we start changing the highlight, and I am not seeing them change here on my screen. So what did I change here in Photoshop that is screwing me up? Hang on 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second here. And we're going to just get rid of Photoshop. Let's see, what did I do here? For some reason, I am not seeing my changes occur here on the screen. So I'm going to exit Photoshop and I will reload Photoshop. 1 second. Technology is so wonderful, huh? No, I'm not going to save the changes to those pictures. And I'm going to go back to Photoshop. Derek's talking about, I'm looking at the chats right here. Yeah, I'm going to get over to the Epson software for the non-dirt and correction or non-IR dirt and correction stuff in a moment or two. So I've got Photoshop back up. Let me grab a different picture off the set of samples that I have here and give you an idea of what you can do with some of these things. So I'm going to share the screen for a second with Photoshop. Okay, so we should see this is a Disneyland souvenir slide that was sold in a pack. You came with a audio cassette, and you would listen to a guided tour of Disneyland. These things were done with absolutely terrible reproductive qualities. I mean, they were like clones of clones of clones. This first scan here is how it looks without any dirt and color. I'm sorry, I did have the dirt feature on. I did not do color correction. The next one here, I had the scanner do its color correction, and I'll show you the difference, what happens if you do it in Photoshop. One thing I particularly noticed here, if you look in this particular version, off to the side here, it gets very, very dark. You don't see a lot of the details, and it's also kind of blown out in certain areas. A lot of people like to do all of their color corrections by hand, all sorts of tonal corrections using the various tools. I tend to use a filter which Kodak made called Digital Rock, which Rock stands for Restoration of Color. They also had another one, Gem, which was a grain enhancement, and then Show was one that did basically dark and light. So let me show you what the Rock filter does. You load it, there's a setting here to go between digital and film images. Digital is because I scanned it, and it's also because the film one never looks any particular better to me. You can adjust the brightness of the scan. You can do all sorts of different things, adjusting the colors here. I generally use a pretty set of default settings. I generally go with it, set like this. This slide being a little darker, I'm going to brighten it up a bit, scan it in, and we end up with this particular one. Again, not quite what I want yet, but we're not done yet. I'm going to make some adjustments here to kind of brighten it up and try to get a little bit more of the wood grain and stuff on the side. Might darken down some of the blown out areas a bit more. You can also then, the nice thing about Photoshop is you can use additional tools. This is another one I use called Edit Lab Pro. You can come by and for the first shot, you can always try Smart Color, see if it makes a difference. not really what I wanted. Again, a little bit too blown out in the face and that. So you can come by, and what you look for are things that are neutral in color. So you want to look for something white and try to set the white balance on it. The black bar here, you want to set the white balance on it. Still not quite getting where you want. And again, I'm trying to go through this at 80 miles an hour, but you can come by and you can say, okay, I'm going to make some other adjustments here. The skin color is not quite right. I'm going to grab somebody's face here with the eyedropper, and I'm going to give it an automatic skin color correction. And you can see it put more red in. Again, if we turn this on and off, you can see the difference it's making in the purplish look on Snow White's gown. The red of the sweater there, it's making a difference. So we would take this particular one, say, okay, close enough. There are some things in here like dirt and scratches that have gotten by. Some of these get by because they were on the picture the way that it was sold, because again, this is a duplicative negative or print, and they often just duplicated dirt in there because they didn't clean them right away. So you can take your healing brush, just dot over it, go around, get rid of the things that are annoying, move down here, do some more cleaning. Oh, here's some more dirt. And again, I won't do all these, but it gives you an idea of what you can do to try to get these cleaned up. If you go and you try to take a really red picture, and let me try one here of Universal Studios. This is a Panaview souvenir slide. And again, this is what I started dealing with when I was working on some of my older prints. They really turn very, very red. And you might say, how do I bring that back? Because, there's no blue, there's no anything. Well, there's enough of it there in most of these, not all these, that you can find a way to get around it. So we would again go to the digital recovery of color. I don't need brightness now because this one's already bright enough. And I would give it a first pass to go through the digital filter here. And we're getting a little closer on it. The sky has a hint of blue in it. The street, though, is still pretty red. Photoshop has its own feature in it that you can try to do an auto color and see if it makes a difference. In this particular case, the street is still pretty red, and the picture has gotten kind of flat. So I'm going to not use that. I'm going to come back in here to Edit Lab. And if I do smart color, it's not particularly doing anything here. The street's real red. So we switch over here to, again, I'm going to look for things that are neutral. Black here for the inside the van. Over here, the white of the van. You can see some of the pink started going away. But we'll know for the most part that the sidewalk is likely not going to be pink. Maybe in Disneyland or Disney World, where some of the pavements are kind of color coded, we can do it. But I'm going to click here and see if we can get some of the pinks out of the road work here. And it's starting to look more like a road. We can then come by and say, I want to look more like a sky. So we're going to put some more blue into that. And we're going to get out of it here. I'm going to come back, do some more shadow and highlight adjustment, because you can see it's pretty bright across the top here. There's not a lot I want to bring out in the shadows, but if I'm clicking this on and off, look over here, for example, at the lattice work over the door. You can start seeing a little bit more of it. You can boost it up. Generally, what I find is I bring it up to a number and then I back it down a few, because you tend to get over enthusiastic and blow things out. I'm going to start dropping the shadows down. Yeah, there's a tool here, radius. If you move it back and forth, you can decide which of your angles, light angles that you're looking at. And again, a lot of this gets into really subjectiveness. You can be an artist and play with it as much as you want. So I'm going to say that looks a little bit better. I might make one more attempt to go through, because sometimes when you change the brightness and that, it picks up different things. So I'll go back and try to get some more of the pink or orange out. You can go in, you can make changes to these colors on a single individual color basis. Again, if you're doing one picture and it's your great grandparents and you really want it to be ideal, you can go and do that. You've got 20,000 of them and you want to get through it and maintain some of your sanity, you probably won't. So I'm going to leave this one as it is for now. This was scanned on the an Epson scanner. As I mentioned, the Nikon does a 35 millimeter. This was a larger image, one of the Panaview souvenir slides, and you can't get those. If I did this in the Nikon, I would crop it. So I did this on the Epson. The Epson has digital ice built into it. It also has its own restoration of dirt and everything. It tries to do it through software interpolation. It does a pretty good job. I'll show you in a moment how you have to be careful with it, but sometimes it just can't get everything that's in there. If we look at things like this tram, you can see a little bit of green spots around here and there. Those are pieces of dirt that the Epson did not get out. And again, you can come by, take them all out by hand. Up here on the roof, there's one. There's another one in the back. The healing brush does a wonderful job, but then you get to a pretty good size one here. So you go over that, cover it over, and it takes it out. It also took out where the running board was along here on this side of the tram. So what you can do then is get your clone tool, grab a part of the running board, and then you can just extend it out to where you think it should have been. And you can pretty much put things back the way they were. Again, you can get down to real pixel level detail of scanning in on this. Again, like anything else, you have to decide on what's meaningful, what's doable. But again, if you look at it from the full fit screen, and we look at it from the version that we have and the version that we started with, you can see you can make a pretty remarkable difference. But one other thing I generally do in each of these is go back and I do a little bit of sharpening on it, because the scanner, when you do the dirt and scratch removal, it does make a little bit of a softness of it. So again, you're probably not seeing it too much, the difference between the sharp and the unsharp version on your monitors going through the zoom, but it is noticeable. Let me see if I zoom in here a quick bit, get down to something like the sign here. And you can see, if again, I can see it. I don't know if you guys can, but you can see like the bars and the sign getting a little bit sharper. Let me grab another one here and see what else we got. Mention prints. Prints can be a bit of a challenge because they get a lot more physical dirt and damage sometimes being handled and that sort of thing. Let me grab two versions of it here. So in this particular one, we're looking at Man in His World up in Montreal from about 1970, 71. Here's the print the way it came out of a photo album. It started turning red over the years. If we look at the other version, this is with the scanner's recovery of color feature turned on. Again, it does a good job. Sometimes on a really bad print, I might use the scanner feature as a start and then base on it. But if we go over to the original version that we started with, again, we can pick the same tool as ever. Builds its map. This print was very large, by the way, scanned at a high resolution, so it takes longer to load. We can bring it in. And it's starting to look better now. You can see the man's clothes are really blown out white. Again, we can come back, image adjust, shadows and highlights. We're not going to really do anything with the background, the shadows, so we're going to leave those out, but we can start taking the highlights and bringing it down, and you can start seeing things like an arm here, that if we turn it on and off, you don't even realize the amount of details that are missing in some of these. And again, we would look to move our radius tool for something that we are particularly happy with, and we're getting something looking better. You might come by and say, okay, maybe I want to make one more pass here. Does auto color make it any better? No. I want to adjust for the black of the background, and maybe I'll go for a little bit more skin color. So it's looking better, but if you look at it, you see some spots of dirt on it. And again, you can take these out with the scanner to a certain extent, but sometimes you still end up with some of them that are left. So we see little dots all over him. You can go and you can start removing all these by hand. It can take quite a while. Or you can go and say, again, I'm going to use a filter. I'm going to go for take out some of the noise. I'm going to take out dust and scratches. And you can set a size here for how big a piece of dirt you want to take out, and then threshold, how sensitive do you want to be. You have to be careful with this. If there's things like buttons on the men's shirt, you want to make sure you're not setting the thing large enough that you're taking out the buttons. And sometimes you just have to let certain pieces of dust go. So if we said, okay, we're going to go all the way down here, I'm only going to take out pieces of dirt that are 2 pixels or smaller. You can see that they've come back. If we go up to a larger size, 8, they're still sort of there. We get up to, a higher number there. But you also have to start looking then, look at the man's face on the right. If we go too far up, you start losing details like the pupils in his eyes. So you have to be kind of careful and try to find something that works that's not too aggressive, but it does a pretty pleasing period a job. So I did that. It took out most of them. Again, with the before and after, left a few, you would again grab your healing tool and come and take those out. So it's a great way to do things with the excuse me, with the various tools you have. Again, sharpen, and I would then save that. Where you have to be careful with these tools, though, is sometimes they get overly aggressive. Let me go, just close everything I'm working with, just so I don't fill up Photoshop with too much junk. I'm not going to save anything I was working on. Let me go and grab another set of pictures, prints. Generally, what I do when I do prints is I'll scan it with no dust correction on. Then I'll use the feature for doing the digital ice, and I'll do it with the next one. I'll do it with the Nikon version of it. So I'm looking at a picture here. I'm bringing in 3 particular versions. And at first glance, they look pretty much the same at this resolution. And again, this is with no correction. You can see some dirt up here between the windows and on the window. If I go over to what was done with the digital ice, those dots are gone. And if I go over here to the Nikon, I'm sorry, the Epson version, oh, it got out some more. But here's where you have to be careful. If you look at the shadows here under the tree, and let me go and look at it, you can start seeing that it's done some weird stuff here. If I go back to the version that was done by the digital ice, I have to just put them back at the same cropping factor. So let me just hop back over there. You can see that that was nice and smooth. Where it gets more important, by the way, this is Carol in her youth, and I'm restoring some of her family photos too. If we go and look at it and say, okay, I'm going to use the Epson version because it cleans out more dirt and stuff, you have to look and see what it's done to her chin. So at times the Epson version can be very helpful, but it does really weird things. If you're doing like a picture of Manhattan and it has skyscrapers in there, you would say, you know, use it, does a great job. And then periodically, every eighth window or something, a skyscraper, it decided, oh, that must have been dirt. I'll just go and fill it in for you. So in this particular case, I would go and I would work with the digital ice version of it. And again, I'm not going to do all these things, but you would say, "Oh, I want to get this dirt away from the mouth. I want to get these particular things." And this is what makes black and white take so long because this was again done on a print. You can only get so much done on a print. But let me show you what happens when you're trying to do a negative, a black and white negative. So we're going to hop down to the 1939 World's Fair. And I'm going to get 2 versions of this. And on first glance, they look pretty much the same. This is the one with dirt and scratches done by the Epson. Over here, this is one with no dirt and scratch removal on it. And it's nice. You can start seeing some of the differences. Let me just close some of these other things here. So I'm just trying to move things on the screen a little easier. If you start, excuse me, certain things that didn't get, there's a big blob of dirt up here, there's a scratch at here. If you go and you look at it, where you have to again be careful of this. If you start paying attention as I flip back and forth between the two of these, there's certain things that start to appear and disappear between them. And I'll give you an example. I will scroll or zoom in rather here. Let me match the on it. And this line that came up here, again, we're looking at the Epson version. Now we're looking at the digital ice version, this little white dot. That was part of the line, which now the Epson has said, oh, that's dirt. I'm going to take it out of there for you. And it's something you really don't want to have taken out. If we go over here and look at the people, again, match it up. There's some small differences here, particularly look at the ambulance in the background. It has taken off the ends of the windshield wipers. Do the end of the windshield wipers matter? No, but other details can. So what, again, I'll do at times, excuse me, is use the Epson version, which has taken out more dirt and scratches than the uh, digital ice version. But then I will go off and say, let me put them back. So again, it's pretty easy. You take your clone tool and you find the spot that you like, and you say, I'm going to grab the windshield wiper. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put the windshield wiper back. And I'm going to come over here and put the windshield wiper back. You can also then start saying there's other things like the details here of the bag, or I guess there's actually a trash can in front of the man. You can come back and say, okay, I want to put the details of the trash can back. So it takes time. It's something that doesn't go automatically. This is a fairly large negative. I think it was about 3 by 5 inches, something like that. Um, Now, some dirt and scratches, it just doesn't get out. So you take your tool, you run across it, and it does an absolutely amazing job of taking out the dirt and scratches. Now, sometimes you get into a problem like this window here. If I try to take out the dirt and scratches, it takes out much of the window. So in some cases, you might say, I'm going to leave it there or take out the stuff before and the stuff after it. I told you this is going to be like watching paint dry. But we've gotten most of that out. In some cases, what you can do then is say, well, there's a nearby window, which is pretty close. I'm going to grab that particular window. I'm going to take that window and move it over here. I didn't quite match that up right. I'm not going to worry about it. But it's a way of sometimes getting around things that are screwed up on you. And most of it goes pretty well. There was a big dirt and mark here. I can take the size of my brush and change it, go all the way around it, and it's gone. Come up here, and it's gone. Come up here, and it's gone. Just takes time. Now let's see if I have another example or two that folks might find of interest. Oh, mention color. A lot of these things change color in all sorts of ways. Let me just close the ones I'm playing with here real quick. Close all. Different films change color different ways. Mentioned some that were bright red, some changed to bright blue, Kodacolor, Ectacolor, Ektachrome do different things. And every now and then you end up with something which is really, really weird. You end up with colors like this that have turned into a bright green. Some of this is the film stock you might have used. Some of it is developing. If you had it done in a Kodak lab, they use certain chemicals. You had it done in the neighborhood drugstore, you might have gotten others. This was the scanner's attempt at bringing the color back. It's not a particularly gratifying picture. This is Waterfall Wacona Falls in Massachusetts, where I used to live, and it came out quite green, right? Well, again, we can go off and we can say, let's fix this. And it comes up with an initial version of it. I'm just going to accept it and not tweak it anything at this point. We're getting closer. The water is kind of blown out here from the way I shot it, being a lousy photographer and shooting in shadows. So I'm going to make the water get a little bit darker. I can then say, okay, in this particular case, the rocks are a little purplish because what it did when it fixed the colors, taking out the green. Again, we can go to smart color. I don't know if I want to use smart color. It kind of got a little too bright in some spots. So I'm going to put it back the way it was, but rocks are generally not purple. I'm going to, again, pick something that should be black, start toning them down. You start getting into something that's much more representative of what the scene should look like. You can also go through and do manual adjustments and say, are there any colors that are particularly left too bright, too high, and you can dial those down. When you edit it, there's still some things, if you look through it, and I'll see something to zoom in, little things that were little bits of fungus or mold or things that have gotten damaged on the picture. Again, the tool here, just go over it, make it go away. There's a scratch that goes all the way through here. So we're going to get a smaller brush. See, if I used a big brush now and just went through this, it's going to kind of make a visible sort of thing. But if I go and make a smaller brush and dial this down, again, you run your tool along it. It's best to do it in sections so that you can keep an eye on it. You want to make sure that you don't introduce a different sort of line. So sometimes what I'll do is just go up and down along where the seam was and try to break it up so it doesn't look like a straight line going through it. But it does a fairly nice job. Now, as mentioned, I've been using Photoshop. A lot of other tools will do the same sort of stuff on this. There is a free tool called GIMP, G-I-M-P. Corel has a number of good programs. There's all sorts of different ones. Most of the tools and techniques that I've done are the same sort of thought in each of them. The only one that is a bit of a challenge is the Kodak plugins, because they stopped selling those. You can find them online. You can still make them work in many particular pieces of software. For the Disneyland crowd that may have joined us, let's take a quick look at Disneyland. Again, the way the particular case here, the way the thing scans with no corrections other than dirt and scratches, the way that the scanner sees it, and we can come back and you get through some of these fairly quick. We can say, okay, I'm going to go and fix the color. And I'm just leaving it on the defaults because I'm going to make some other adjustments. We can now come over here. Again, the smart color make it any better? Not too much. In this particular case, I feel the ground is a little bit too yellow for what it would be. If I go and use that for a white spot, it kind of fixes it, but it kind of makes the trees a little bit too blue or whatever in there. Again, you can do a lot of these things manually. I'm just going to do real quick examples here. Make the sky a little bluer. I can come by, do a little bit more work on the shadows, and that if I take out in this particular one, dial it up, you can see more details turning up on the top of the teepees. I can then say, okay, I want to bring down some of the brightness so I pick up some of the more definition around the trees. We'll do our inevitable sharpening. And you can see you went fairly quick. I didn't time myself, but that was probably a minute or so to take you from something which is pretty well gone to something which is getting much closer to reality. Again, these things do need some touch-ups and cleanups. We look up here, there's all sorts of dirt and stuff that is still left. You can go by and you can do things like in this particular area, say I'm going to try to take a whole bunch of them out at once, and has something called a content aware fill, so you don't have to manually do each of these particular ones. Sometimes it does some weird stuff and you have to be careful of it, that it doesn't introduce an artifact which is worse than the one you're getting out of. But as we look around it, it came out
Bill?
generally. Yes.
We're only seeing a big gray square, no picture.
A big gray square, no picture. Okay, I wonder, your screen sharing is paused. Okay. I don't know what I must have clipped to do that, so hang on. Thank you for letting me know. I will go back to screen share.
I hope I didn't do that to you, Bill.
It says your screen sharing is paused. How did I pause that? Huh. Stop share. Okay. Well, maybe this is the end of the talk. Maybe we came to an end. I have no idea. Somebody got really. Your screen sharing is paused.
Let me take a look and see if it's on my side. Hold on. I might have
Okay.
accidentally done that to you. Oh, security in waiting room. You started. I don't have it here.
You are sharing sound, yes. Recording in this computer, yes. Enhanced encryption, yes. Huh. I have no idea why screen sharing is paused. Oh, it's up here. Oh, let's try resume share. Resume share. Well, that's very interesting. I could cancel Zoom and lose you all. So I guess we will stop sharing the screen. I have no idea why this is paused. But well, that's a great way for stopping there. So unbelievable. So I have that's never happened before. So that was a great way to put me on mute. Whoever did it, thank you. So anyway, that's a real quick. I had some other examples of taking dark blue pictures and other ones and ends. But I just wanted to do this as a way to encourage people. If you get your pictures out of your family photo album, somebody on line was mentioning about having them in acidic pages. One of the worst things you can have is your pictures in those old magnetic albums. All of our moms and dads probably bought them, and they were really great because you didn't have to use corner tabs of the pictures. You peeled back the plastic, you put the picture on a slightly sticky ribbed piece of cardboard in there, put the plastic back over it, and they stayed in place. Well, that slightly sticky paper will eat its way right through your print and manage to destroy it. There are some ways to get it off. There's a dissolving sort of agent with a sharp blade that you can slide through there. It's very hard to get many of those off. In some cases, the best thing you can do is just put it on a flatbed scanner as is, scan it, and try to preserve it through time right now, and then just let the thing continue to eat its way through. But those albums are really really nasty. A lot of people's photo albums, even the old ones, had acidic paper. I will buy collections from people where the paper is just about falling apart. Some cases it is transferred its way up into the prints, other cases not. But the most you can do to get your pictures out of albums and into photo pages that you can get fairly cheaply that are made through, you don't want to get the real cheap ones because plastic elements in there that will oxidize and do bad things to your pictures. But if you get ones that are photo rated and put them in there, the pictures will be much happier over time. As I mentioned, on each of these things, all the pictures all of us have that are on film are going to deteriorate, other than maybe the black and white ones. Black and white ones hold up really well, the negatives. Um, some of them oxidize, and there's some issues again, depending on how well they were initially done. But if you saw that negative I had of the 1939 World's Fair was it's 80 years old, 90 years old, whatever it is, and it held up really well, sharp as a tack. I'd say basically 90 years from now, try to go find people's pictures off their iPhones and see if you can, still look at it. Good luck. But do whatever you can, scan them. What I do, my workflow, by the way, is have several scanners and several computers here at home. Uh, since it takes so long to fix a picture in Photoshop, I generally have one scanner going next to me and I just do raw scans, just scan it, save it to a TIFF file, no compression. And then I'll periodically take it into Photoshop. And I don't try to do every one because if you try to do every one of 20 something thousand pictures, you're never going to get done. So you look at the better ones and try to get those done. And then, you can always go back to the other ones at a point in time. But try to save these and get through it. Yuko is taking a class at Pierce. Are you aware of a substitute for Photoshop? Yeah, again, Corel has some much cheaper programs. Photoshop used to have one that I think was called Photoshop Elements. I don't know if it's still available or not. It gave you 90% of Photoshop at about 20% of the cost. And most of the things that were not in Elements, you don't want to be using anyway. There's so much in Photoshop, you could go at it for the rest of your life and never master it. But Corel has some good ones. There's a number of others that are out there, and Yuko, I'll try to get you some information. Get it to Carol, we'll get it to you. Uh, Photoshop is available now on a subscription basis. If you are going to a school like Pierce, you can get the student version of it, which is cheaper. The downside is each year you have to renew, and if you ever leave Pierce, then they're going to say we want you to renew at the full market rate. But since Carol is also taking classes at Pierce, we were able to use the student discount on Photoshop. Again, I don't use Photoshop, the cloud version so much, but I tend to use others. Warner has mentioned Photoshop Elements. Again, most of what you want to do, you can do in Photoshop Elements. You don't need to go the full blown thing. You can find other filters besides the Kodak ones that are out there. As I mentioned, the Edit Lab Pro does a fairly good job. What I like about the Kodak one is it tends to do it in one pass. With the Edit Lab Pro, I'll tend to have to make 3 or 4 passes, fix the whites, fix the blacks, adjust the color, but it does do a pretty good job, and that's still commercially available. You can also do all sorts of other things on these tools. You can, again, adjust the colors of, like with Snow White, her gown shouldn't have had a certain color. You can dial it up, dial it down. You can get selective colors, replace all the blues with greens or all the greens with reds, or do whatever you want to do. But there's lots of things. Derek, were you going to add
Yeah.
something?
You mentioned the Kodak software, and those three programs are no longer available from Kodak. They stopped offering them about maybe 3 years ago, and I haven't been able to locate used copies on the secondary market. And the only thing that you might be able to find is cracked versions in the Wares sites, and those are most likely going to serve you up some malware, because I've looked.
I still have the install versions here somewhere. I'll have to look to see to get to you. And the issue is what happens now is you try to use it, it tries to go off to a non-existent server and register it. And there is a way to get around that, luckily, that you can say, okay, you do something in your local host file on your PC, and it gets around it. So there is a workaround. But luckily other people figure these things out. I do need to try to install them in a 64 version bit of Windows and keep going and seeing what I can do with that. But I do have the install, and remind me offline. I'll see what I can do to track those down for you. They were really great tools, and they unfortunately only did them in 32 bits. And then Kodak, as we all know, imploded. And it was really great that Kodak had actually bought those. They were done by a company called Applied Science Fiction. And again, when we first got it, well, this is really great stuff. They were about $100 each, something like that, and just did a wonderful job of turning down the colors. As I mentioned, the Nikon can do a really, really good job of resolving stuff. But if you have really grainy pictures, it does a really great job of bringing all that grain in. Well, with their plugin, you could also start dialing the grain down. So you could say, okay, I don't want to lose the details in the face, but I don't need the sky to be quite so grainy. So you can set highlights, set different options, bring it down. Another one that they had was the one for show, which was to bring out colors, or sorry, light that was lost in shadows. I tended to use the Photoshop tools more than the digital show one. I think Photoshop gives you a bit more fine tuning and other stuff. So yeah, that's again. There, I don't know where the screen share went away. Bedeviled by that, but other than that, I was just going to show more of the same thing. Is there anything here that I absolutely wanted to look at?
You could probably restart it at this point from what I'm looking at. Give it a shot. You might be able to bring it up.
All right, we can give it a try and see here. So let me.
I still have to end the meeting from what I can see.
All right, let me give this a try. Nope. As soon as I bring it up, it comes up and tells me it's paused. And
Can you
it's
go?
really.
can you click on the screen? There should be a button to turn off the pause down there. If you click on the green screen share.
Yeah, I'm clicking on it. It says resume share and it just sits there. So
Huh, okay, well, yeah, it's
I'm going to try
it's
no
relevant.
share here and see what happens. That is really weird. Anyway, I was
Yes.
just going to do more of the same crap. I had some pictures of very blue. Again, I like to have, I shot most of my slides over the years in Ektachrome. I really liked Ektachrome because it was really good for blues, for outdoors shots. Unfortunately, dark shots, Ektachrome does go blue. Some of the Kodachrome goes red. Kodachrome over the years is all Kodachrome is not the same. The Kodachrome from the 50s and early 60s is not the Kodachrome that they were selling in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like everything else, they cheapened it down. So if you get a Kodachrome from the 50s, for the most part, you can pop them in the scanner and wow, you're right back to 1950. You take a 1970s Kodachrome, stick it in the scanner, you have a lot more work ahead of you. Some of the others are really, really bad. You get into Agfacolor. Uh, I think Agfacolor said as soon as you shot it, it went on a path of self-destruction to turn as purple and dark as possible. So you had Agfacolor, Fuji, different colors. Some of the Fuji stock was better certain years than others. So after a while, you can almost pick up a picture, look at it, and say you know what you're going to get by the mount. In some cases, you have no idea what you're looking at because it's a generic plastic mount that came from Doc's drugstore down the street, and Doc mixed up whatever chemicals he did or whatever. And sometimes you can see things that were not properly done, different spots on them for drying, wasn't well done, things like that. And that's where you have to start manually taking those things out because if it's embedded into the thing, you can only do so much. Any thoughts, questions, or people that know? First of all, if anybody knows how to get screen share out of pause mode, if anybody could look that up on the internet for me while we're talking, that would be appreciated just in case it ever happens again. But if there's
Kodachrome
any,
comments. You
what's that?
mentioned Kodachrome comments. You mentioned
Yeah.
the different Kodachromes, and yes, you're correct. The earliest Kodachromes from the 30s are different from the later 40s and 50s ones, and the one that seems to be the one universally hated is the Kodachrome 2.
Yep.
That seems to be the one that no one liked. If you've got the Kodachrome that came after it, I don't know if they completely reverted to the old formula, but those seem to be fine because I was using Kodachrome 25, Kodachrome 40, and Kodachrome 64 on into the late 80s, early 90s when I switched over to the more saturated E6 based films that Fuji and Kodak itself came up with, because Kodachrome does not render color accurately, and you had a limited choice of where you could get it processed because of the difficulty of the processing itself, since the dyes are added in the processing step. So I know a lot of people were mourning the death of Kodachrome, but when I'd asked them, well, when was the last time you shot it? And they kind of went, well, 10 years ago. It was kind of like, well, now you know why it went away. It was an environmental hazard was the big reason why Kodak had to kill it, because there were regulations with some of those dangerous chemicals, and they've allegedly studied to see if they can bring it back without those hazards, and clearly they have not found a way to do it yet that satisfies their quality control people.
Yep. Greg, I'll get to you in just 1 second. I see you put your hand up. I'm just looking through the comments here. Jim Brown was mentioning he uses ViewScan software. ViewScan, I use Nikon Scan or Epson Scan for most of my work. ViewScan is another very, very good package, and a lot of people like it because it can drive just about any scanner ever built. So what's really nice about it is if you have an old scanner that your manufacturer gave up on years ago and didn't produce Windows 7, 8, 10 drivers, ViewScan will drive just about anything. I don't like the interface on it as much. And again, you can do a lot of tweaking on it. There's another one called Silverfast, which has probably the most confusing interface I've ever seen. And Silverfast also basically has a licensing scheme that really stinks. Nikon Scan is free, so that licensing I like. ViewScan is very economical for the price, and you buy one copy. And on this particular computer on right now, I have multiple scanners. I have an Epson V700. I have an Epson what is it here? A whatever it is, 7520. I've got a Nikon Coolscan 5000 and a Nikon Coolscan 5. Those would all require separate licenses from Silverfast, all connect to the same computer. Even on the Nikon, there's just one version which is slightly faster and has slightly different color resolution than the other, and he charges you for a whole nother license. So Silverfast is another tool. ViewScan is pretty good. As I said, it gets down to like anything else, what you get used to. I generally tend to stay with the manufacturer's software because it's faster. And again, it's just what you get to know. But if you really do need to make tweaks, ViewScan for the Epson, or say for the Nikon, will let you make a lot more tweaks than you can do with the original Nikon software. So you can pull out better results. Where I really like to use it is if I have a picture that's really crap, really dark, dirty, scratched, really messed up. The ViewScan takes me longer, but you can produce better results than you do on the Nikon Scan. Just for sheer volume, I tend to stay with the Nikon just for ripping through it. Mentioned the non-IR dust. Jim used ViewScan with the Nikon. Yeah, it does great work. Let's see. Oh, question here about color file saving. Basically, what a lot of people do is every time they take a change to a picture, they'll make a layer. Photoshop has the ability to go back. If you saw, there were times I said, "Oh, how do I like this?" I'll just go back a level. Some people really like to get into making a layer for everything they do. So they make an adjustment layer to change the colors, and then they'll make an adjustment layer to take out dots and dirts and everything. That starts getting you a pretty big size file if you save it in its native format, because it's saving each of these layers. So if you have something that's scanned at 4000 DPI and you make a layer of color and another layer of dirt and another layer of everything, you're basically getting 3 copies of the same picture all stacked up on each other. And you can do some nice work blending between layers and bringing them up or down. I generally will stay with the original picture. If I don't like what I want, I just go back 1, 2, 3 steps. Sometimes I'll get mad at myself and say, oh, I need to go way back. But one of the things I did not show, and I can't show you now because it doesn't work, is you can save history states within Photoshop. So you can say, okay, I'm pretty happy with where I am now. Just draw a line in the sand. I'm going to go back and try some more new, wacky, weird stuff. And none of that worked out. I'm going to go back to my line in the sand, not all the way back to the beginning of the process. So you end up with basically, if you do it the way I do it, the file doesn't get any bigger than when you first scanned it. Now, I scan them all in uncompressed TIFF format. A typical 35 millimeter slide will end up being about 50 megabytes in size. I do not save my final product on that particular size because, again, I just have so many pictures to do it. I'd be filling up my hard drive like mad. So generally, you can save it as a JPEG file, turn the compression all the way down, and you'll get like a 5-to-1 ratio. So your 50 meg file now becomes 10 meg. You can start dialing it down if you really want to save space. I always still have the original slide if I ever need to go back to it. Again, over time, some of them are going to change. But I do have a lot of disk space on my system, but I just, I'm not going to save everything at 50 meg sizes. Some people, think it's horrifying that I save them in JPEG, but it's a matter of, if I do ever, like I'll have a client will come to me and say, hey, I really like this picture and I want to turn it into a billboard, it's going to go on the side of a building. I'll just take out the original slide, rescan it for them. Actually, in most cases, you can send them an uncompressed JPEG and it's going to work out fine for them. But if anybody says I need something really big, I'll go back, rescan it, and send them an uncompressed TIFF file, and then they, can go and print or do anything they want with that. But for the most part, yeah, Chris, you're ending up with 30 megabyte files. Yeah, it's they get big again if you save them with all the layers. if what I would do is just, again, drop them down, do your layer compression as one of your final stops, then do and save it. Because unless you ever want to go back and do something with those layers again, I mean, if you're happy with the picture and you say there's no chance I'm ever going to go back and change the shadows or go and change the colors, and most of that you can always do that again anyway, even from the compressed version. Okay, just seeing what other things. Derek likes Silverscan better than ViewScan. Yeah, I tell you, Silverscan might do a lot, but I hate the interface. Maybe you can educate me in it, and what you call it, and again, I refuse to pay for 4 copies of the same software on one computer because I'm only obviously able to use one at a time.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah.
My copy of Silverscan came with the Epson scanner, and it no longer works under Windows 10. So, unless I want to pony up the dollars to get a discounted version with my previous license, and I'm rather uninclined to do that because it occasionally came up with a better scan than Epson, but the Epson software still seems to be the best, easiest to use versus ViewScan and Silverscan.
Yeah, same here. Greg, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I in the 80s, I was a manager of one of the stores. It was a mall store in South Florida called Photo Center, and so in this store it was privately owned, and one of the things that they told us to do was to push the Fuji film, and because they made more money on it. Naturally, because Kodak made more money on their film, and we were to tell people it had brighter colors. But I found that was true. Kodak seemed to be darker, seemed to have more greens and browns, and Fuji to me was more like the Technicolor that I liked in the older films. I cannot tell you without going back to the films, and I had a Minolta 35 millimeter. It wasn't an SLR, and it wasn't a really sophisticated camera, but I took some real crisp, beautiful pictures, and I treasure them because they're relatives long past, but they looked terrific, and they were Fuji's. So I was happy with them then, and as far as I know, they're still okay. And Fuji also at the time, this is around 84, 85, was the official film of the Olympics. But this was when there were problems with the Olympics because I think there was some naughty political stuff going on. And Disney had developed a Sam the Eagle character, an animated character. And I think Fuji was the official film, and the Sam Eagle character appeared on the boxes. Just a little bit of trivia there.
I think Fuji was also the official film of Disney for a while, wasn't it? At the theme parks.
Well, it was Kodak was of Disneyland, and then in the early '70s, GAF, as Henry Fonda used to say, was the official film, and also sponsored the early guidebooks. I still have some of those.
Yeah, I think
because they sold
Fuji.
Viewmasters there.
I think Fuji got it after GAF, so I'm pretty sure I'll have to go look for that. Yeah, I mean, it's different type of film over the years. Like I said, I tended to just like Ektachrome for whatever reason. Well, there's also interesting, if you take a print and a 35 millimeter negative and a 35 millimeter slide of the same thing, you can generally pull a lot more detail out of a 35 millimeter slide than you can out of a 35 millimeter negative in terms of the range of colors and the way it recorded the different levels of light in that. So I tended to I used to do all of my own darkroom stuff and everything back in the deep dark ages, and I just really got into slides because you mentioned, Greg, things like the color saturation. As I mentioned, I liked Ektachrome because I tended to take more outdoor pictures of places than I did of people, and I really liked the way the color went. Somebody asked me a question in chat: when you undo an edit in Photoshop, does it really put it completely back to the way it was, or is there any artifact? it puts it back. It basically is recording a memory state. If you look at your temporary file when you're working in Photoshop, it builds a temporary file, sticks it out on your hard drive. I was looking at last night, I was just cleaning up something and it was like 2.5 gigabytes of space. And I was only working on a file that was, 70, 80 megabytes or so, but it was keeping each thing. You can go into Photoshop and you can say, I want to keep a memory cache that goes back from my last 5 changes, 10 changes, 20 changes. You can get a whole big thing as far as how much you want to go back. That, of course, makes that file that much bigger. But when you're saying undo, it's basically, say there was and it happens all the time. There'll be a person with a picture's face, and I'm trying to take a line off the face, and I'll work on it, and oh, wow, I just took out her lips. I don't like that. When you do an undo, it's not mathematically putting back what you just took out. It's actually going back to exactly where it was, going to its own internal memory file and restoring the picture as it was before you did it. So undo, you're not losing anything. That's what makes the tool so useful. And again, you can go off and you can save a memory state, which will keep that independently of your normal buffer. So if I say I'm going to have my normal buffer as my last 20 changes, but I'm going to now save a memory state, and you can save multiple ones of them too. You can say, I'm going to do this when I change the greens. I'm going to do this when I change the red. I'm going to do this when I change the blue. Now I'm going to do all my scratch stuff. Oh, no, I want to go back to my blue. Oh, no, I want to go back to my green. You can go back up there. They also have something which I don't use a lot in Photoshop. You can do what they call non-destructive filters, where you can go off and you can change something, and then you can go back later on and say, I want to take out just this one filter. And that's an issue with sort of thing. Say you take a picture and you change the color, and then you take out a scratch, and then you say, oh, I want to go and redo that color. If you did not use a non-destructive filter and you go back to that original filter, you've lost everything that you've achieved after that. Some filters will allow you to say, I'm going to go back and just take out what I did on this one filter, but all the subsequent changes after that are going to be okay. So there's all sorts of different things you can do in that regard. It's an amazing tool. Like I said, I spend way too much time. When I was working full time, I found it to be absolutely my way of therapy. I'd be going crazy at work, budgets and schedules, and who do I lay off today, and how do I get another customer, and how do we do this and do that? Come home, and how do I get this scratch off this lady's face from a picture of the World's Fair in 1939? Work on that for an hour for some stranger I've never met, that nobody in the world would ever know that face was fixed or anything other than me. And I realized for an hour, I never thought once about budget schedules or laying people off. And I think it's the only way I kept my sanity. So it's been great fun. And I have all my family photos that I'm working on, the ones I took, the ones my parents took, and everything. And it's great going back into the time and working on those. Please mention how no 2 color monitors match. Yeah, is there a way to set up your color monitor so the color is correct? Yeah, again, that really varies. There are gadgets you can get, which I do not have, that you can plug into your computer and bring up a color target on your computer. I think it's called a color spider. SPYDER is one of them. You stick the little gadget onto your monitor and say calibrate, and it will look at that square and know that square should be a certain particular white, and another square should be a certain particular green, a certain particular blue. And it will go off and adjust your color settings for your monitor to match what its predetermined version is. I don't have that. It's never been a particular issue to me. I'd like to think I have a fairly nice Samsung monitor here. They do age over time though, and colors do go with anything, electronic things. The old, when you had a CRT monitor, the phosphors would change on you and things would go. But a lot of people will do that. They'll calibrate their monitor at the beginning of every day, knowing that white is always going to be the exact same white. Chartreuse is going to be the exact same chartreuse. You can also do it with your scanner. You can get called, I think it's an ITC target. You can pop it into your scanner, run your Nikon scanner, your Epson scanner, your Minolta, whatever, and do it, and then calibrate it that way. By the way, I mentioned the Nikon scanners are not sold anymore. There are some scanners. Again, go on Amazon or something to look for them that do most of what they do. They still have the digital scratch and dust removal feature. A lot of them are say 3600 DPI. Most people won't recognize the difference between 3236 or 4000 DPI. Somebody just put a link up here. Thanks, Derek, for how you can monitor your color. There's a lot of scanners out there that you can get. They're a lot cheaper than the Nikon. Because again, the Nikon you got to buy in the used market. The trouble buying in the used market is you don't know if it was an idiot like me that just put 100,000 pictures through it, or if it was a little lady from Pasadena that only scanned slides on Sundays and did a couple hundred. You can the nice thing about the Nikons is they hardly ever wear out. They were built like utter tanks, and the thing that major happens is you get dust and stuff that comes on them. There are some very nice videos online on how to take them apart and clean it and put it all back together. I tend to be chicken. I mail mine to a guy for $100. He cleans them, sends it back to me, and about every 3-4 years, get the scanner cleaned. But some of the ones that you can find out there, there's some really, really, really cheap ones out there where you just put the scanner in it and it takes a picture, and some of the resolution is terrible. Oh, there's one other way that a lot of people are starting to do it that I have not done, which is use a DSLR camera, the digital single lens reflex camera. You can take your slide or negative, put it in a special holder and a special lens mount, take your DSLR and click it. Goes very fast. You obviously saw it doing the Nikon. It takes about 2-3 minutes, from start to finish to do a picture. With the DSLR, you can go and do a picture in 4 seconds or something. Just line it up, click it, line it up, click it. You need to have an even light source behind it, so that if you're shooting, you don't end up with one part of it being brighter rather than another. There's some of them that come with nice diffused light sources behind it. Others, they tell you to put a blank white screen on your computer and shoot towards that. You don't get any scratch and dust removal on that. You have to do that all via software or just accept it. But a lot of people are absolutely swearing by the DSLR version because you get a very, very high caliber copy because your DSLRs generally are very high in pixel ratings. And it's also a very fast way of going through it. So what a lot of people do is they go through and again, if you have a thing of 100 slides, click it, click it, click it, click it. Oh, here's one I really like. Now I'm going to make a different scan of it. I'm going to work on restoring that. But meanwhile, I've saved all 100 of my slides. Going the DSLR route is also more economical in that the mounts and everything you're buying are generally a lot cheaper than a scanner. But if you are looking for a scanner, I think it's called Optima is one of the companies. PlusTech is another one. I actually have a PlusTech scanner that I use very, very rarely that has, for some reason, it does a so-so job on most slides. When I get to something that's really, really, really dark, I will scan it and get a regular version, but then also get a very dark version of it. And then I will use what they call a high dynamic range to start combining the two images in Photoshop, so I can take the very dark part, the very light part, put them all back together and not destroy anything along the way. Very time consuming, so I don't use that an awful lot. But they do make some pretty nice scanners. They're also very small and very they don't take up a lot of real estate on the desktop. The Nikon I'm looking at is probably 12 inches long, 8 inches high, 3 inches across. The Nikon 9000, which I don't have, which is the large size scanner for doing 6x9s and that's a real beast. That's it weighs a ton, and it also only works with a FireWire import, which not much. Glenn asked, are there any slide scanners that work with a Kodak carousel without taking out all the slides? Yes, and if you're King Midas, you might want to get one. There's a guy that sells these. He actually has a modified Kodak carousel. Instead of the light, coming out the front, he's basically installed a imaging device inside it. But they go, I think the last time I looked, it was around $2,500 to $3,000. You know, and they do nice job. And again, you just hook it to your computer and, you know, with a USB connection, the computer will go take a picture, tell the scanner to advance to the next thing. The carousel will go take the next picture, go to the next one, and go. I didn't have $3,500 or something to do it for all the carousels that I have. The other thing I didn't like about that sort of thing is the same thing with the slide scanner that you can get for the you know, the bulk feeder you can get for the Nikon. You have to be there anyway to sit there and you know, adjust it. Again, if you have a slide, the carousel of 80 slides, and they're all, say, outdoor at Epcot on July 21st, you know, whatever year, maybe the lighting's all pretty much the same. But now if you've run inside, you know, Living Seas or hop over to land and you went inside, now you're going to have to start saying, oh, now I've gone into indoor lighting and it's darker, so I'm going to have to start making some adjustments to it. So it saves you the trouble of taking the slide out of the projector. But for the most part, I want to take them out of the projector anyway, because what I do is I take them out, I clean them with a lint-free cotton cloth, and then I'll blow them with compressed air, because they do, sitting in a slide projector, which is plastic, the plastic tends to oxidize. Slides that I've found have been sitting there for a number of years tend to build up a film over them. So I will take all my slides or all my negatives before I pop them in the scanner. I've wiped them down to try to get any oxidation or haze off, particularly if you buy a slide from somebody else and they came from a house with a smoker. Oh my God, the crap you can take off one of them just doing the initial wipe is astonishing. You can also, if you get into something that's really bad, there's different chemicals you can use to try to reduce mold or things like that. If you really get into it, there's stuff that are things called wet mounting. If you have a slide or a negative that's really scratched, if you get into wet mounting, you put it in a special chemical solution that fills in the scratches and does a very nice job. I bought, and I've not yet used, a wet mounting kit for some of my black and white stuff, because with black and white, you've got to take them out by hand or, you know, using the software. But for the most part, you're spending a lot of time doing it manually. Beth says, I've got 10 or so carousels brought home. Yeah, you need to make the time to do something with them, because, you know, 10 years from now, they're going to look 10 years worse than they were today. And it goes pretty quick. Like I said, I scan them. I sit here, you know, watching something on TV and scan it, reach over, put another one, scan it. And then I just go back and find the ones that I want. You know, if I did a carousel of 80 of them, here's 5, 6 or something I really like, and do it. Yeah, Weiss #2 mounts. There's some people got really heavy duty mounts. These things were plastic, I think, you know, made to take a truck driving over them. And they will, in some cases, hold a slide between panes of glass. And you think this thing is impervious. Well, the plastic and everything oxidizes, and sometimes it gets really nasty. So you have to open up some of these mounts. In that particular case, where you might want to use the this little gadget again I mentioned was just selling, I can take an individual slide or an individual negative and put it in here and just cover one of these little squares, pop it into the scanner and scan it without any mount. So a lot of times what I'll do then is, that the mounts are too far gone or anything, I'll just you know, toss them out and just save the you know, the piece of film inside a you know, protective page. But a lot of people had glass mounts and the glass scratches. Excuse me. The slides do a pretty good, the scanners do a pretty good job of going through the slide, but it's also, again, a lot of that glass tends to fog over time. It doesn't stay, you know, crystal clear, optical pure over time. Carolyn mentioned in chat that you had a lot of slides from planetarium shows go green on you, huh? Is that from the heat of the lamps?
Well, that and the aging, yeah, and just constant exposure to the light, and it was ectochrome. So.
Right. Yeah, I have the negatives. I was just working on that green negative of the waterfall the other day, and you know, I have no idea why that particular roll went green, because the roll I took before it and the roll I took after it looked pretty good. But wherever I had it developed that particular day, who knows what they were doing out back with the chemicals. And, when I printed pictures back then, they looked great. They looked fine. By the way, that's one thing I noticed back in the, say the 80s and that. I used to get a lot of pictures, took pictures all the time. And we had at the Disney studio, we had the Mickey Mouse Recreation Center, the MMRC, and I could just go and drop a roll of film off at the MMRC, and a couple days later it came back, and it was great. Well, I was always saying to myself, I am a really worse photographer than I thought. This picture is overexposed. This picture is underexposed. That sort of thing. I really found that when I got into my old negatives, I am a lousy photographer, but not as bad as I thought. Because when you were having a lot of those pictures done back at that time, they put it in the machine, and they just ran it through at one average setting, just like I mentioned with the slide stack scanner or anything else. You do 100 pictures, it just averages it. When I take some of those same old negatives now, 40 years later, and I can put them through the scanner, I cannot believe they're the same picture that I've had sitting in that album that I've been cursing myself at, because that sky, which is all white and nasty, I didn't blow out the sky. It was the photo developer or the photo printer that blew out the sky. So luckily I can take those old pictures and in most cases make them look far, far better than the versions that are sitting in the albums all those years, because you can take the time, do the nuance check, and do with each of them to get it back. So, and there's all sorts of other things you can do too. I mean, if somebody's skin was looking particularly nasty or the shadows of the lights were bad, you can do all sorts of things. And again, I tended to do most, scenic shots as opposed to people shots. But sometimes you get into things like my friend Mike Clark is on the phone or the screen here. There's a shot of him and me and Irwin Allen, who produced the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and Lost in Space and everything. And there's a shot of us together, and somehow I'm blinking during that shot. And if I really wanted to, I could go back and find another shot of eyes and put them back in there. You can do all sorts of things. And I've shown pictures online of how there's people in a picture you don't like. Like I did a thing for my parents years ago. It was their 50th wedding anniversary, and took a family picture of us all together. And my mother said it was a really nice picture, but what about my brother's ex-wife? Wasn't she originally in the picture? And I said, yeah, I used the computer and took her out. And my mother said, how long did that take? And I said, oh, it took about 2 hours to get rid of her. And I said, well, consider yourself lucky. It took Jerry 6 years. So but, it worked out well. She was gone. And that was really a tough one because my brother had his arm around his then wife at the time. And when, you take her out, now my brother's kind of lost his arm. But there was my brother Ed in another picture. So I just kind of took Ed and moved him down. And next thing you know, there's Jerry with his arm around Ed, and Terry was gone. She was never seen again. So you can do all sorts of fun stuff. The other nice thing with Photoshop too is very, very easy. And you do this with almost any photo editing thing. You can get rid of red eyes. We all think about, we took all the pictures, particularly with the little Instamatic cameras and everything, and you end up with red pupils, and everybody's looking at the devil staring back. Or you take a picture of your dog and his bright green eyes staring at you. It's basically a 1 or 2 click fix in Photoshop. Corel, almost all of them have a red eye feature. So you scan it in, put a box around the eye, said fix red eye, bam, it's gone. Go to the next eye, fix red eye, bam, it's gone. It's faster to do it than it is to talk about doing it. But again, now your pictures look that much more lifelike and uniform than Satan staring back at you. And if you want to, you can turn somebody into Satan. You can turn their eyes red and put horns on them and do all sorts of other things. So web page for slide snap scanners, $3,500. I was about right. None for sale at the moment. Making a new batch. I rent you for a week for $495. Yeah, $3,500. I still got a carousel here in my.
Yes, you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
All they're doing is using it to rephotograph the slides, and there's no adjustment being done. You're not doing any color correction. You're not doing any dust or scratch removal. I would say skip it. I would say invest the time and do the job right.
Yeah, in this particular case, you think about $3,500. Wow. I mean, for $3,500, you could buy a, 2 or 3 Nikon scanners and sell them back. You can sell them for the exact same amount of money you buy them for, and just take them out of the tray, put them in there, scan it, put it back in the tray, put it, that sort of thing. Oh, Greg Arbar, was Irwin Allen wearing his colorful outfit? He was wearing was it a bright blue suit that day? It was Irwin was colorful enough just in his own human being that his colorful clothes, yeah, when you were in Irwin's orbit, everything else paled. He was quite the character. So, any other questions, thoughts? Again, I tried to just give this as a quick example to encourage people. It's oh, hi, Baron, what's up?
Oh, I just had a couple things to add if you got a minute.
Sure. Yeah.
I use Paint Shop Pro myself. Have been using it since it first came out 25, 30 years ago. And I find it does just everything that I need. So you might want to consider that. And it's relatively cheap these days, even current version 2021.
Right. When I mentioned Corel, that's the one I meant.
Yeah,
Paint
Corel.
Shop
Well,
Pro.
Corel bought it out about 20 years ago. It used to be owned by Jasky developed it, but then Corel bought it out, I think at version 10 or something like that. But it's pretty much the same program. You had brought up the fact I had mentioned to, I guess he's left now, to whatever he was, about saving a file size.
Oh, right.
Yes, it gets very large in terms of how many layers you put on there. And sometimes I do a couple iterations. I'll take the file and I'll do basic correction to it where it gets large, and then I'll save it and then compress it down, and then go to another file where I've got it now compressed down and start doing other things to it, like color correction or adding colors or modifying it. So it may go to 2, 3 file size iterations before I end up with the finished file. This way, everything's not in just one file all by itself.
Right.
And that's one way to keep your file sizes down. The other thing with regard to color monitor correction is it's all perception, and maybe the spiders and the other things out there can accurately adjust the color to your monitor, but your eye in perception of color changes daily depending on the amount of light and the color of light, whether you've got fluorescent or whether you've got incandescent, whether you're outside, whether you're inside, and it's constantly changing. So one of the things that I do is, yes, I kind of set my monitor that I work the files on to where I think it's relatively true white. And I set the gamma correction as well too, because sometimes I keep my screen a little bit darker. And if I work on a file with a darker screen, then it's going to end up looking darker when I distribute it as compared to maybe everybody else's screens who are a little bit lighter. So one of the ways I check a file is not only do I look at it on the screen that I'm using, but I'll transfer it over to another computer, and I'll transfer it to 2 of my tablets, my iPad and my Android tablets, and I'll look at them that way because they each have little slightly differences in color balance. And then I can see, okay, is it too bright? Is it too dark? Did I get the color correction right, or is it slightly off? And that's a good check for me to see if the monitor that I'm working on has stayed accurate or not. So that's one of the good ways to kind of see by looking at it on other screen platforms if you've actually got it correct. And then I just compress it down to whatever the final file size that I'm distributing it to. You, for instance, Bill, may need to have larger file sizes distributed for submission to your books, to the publishers for your books, where they want a higher DPI for a photograph as compared to maybe putting it on the internet where it doesn't need to be so large. If you're only distributing a file size of 1,000 by 800 or 1,200 by 800,
Yeah.
for distribution on the computer, the file size doesn't need to be that big. But compared to trying to print something like that, then you're just going to get a bunch of jaggies on a file size that small. And that's where you want to adjust it based on exactly where you're distributing that file once you get it done.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with scanning a file too. If you know you're only going to scan the file to distribute it on the internet at a relatively, mediocre file size, you don't really need to scan it at 300 dpi, and have it end up being 60 megs in size when in the raw file once you scan it. You can scan it down and work on it there. So that all comes with experience with regards to how much you really are going to get into scanning and how many files you're going to scan and how much time you want to take.
Well, it's interesting. 'Cause you mentioned about the different sizes of the books and that they say, perception in life is everything, right?
Yeah.
And I've had it, and again, when I send in everything for the book, they want uncompressed TIFF format. So I had
Right.
some pictures that I sent them, as a sample. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this particular book. Here's some samples. And I sent some in, and I had mixed in some JPEGs with it, right? So they wrote back and said, "Oh, well, no, we only consider, the TIFF format. The JPEGs are unacceptable, quality." So I went into Photoshop. I did save as TIFF. I sent them back the exact same file, saved as a TIFF file. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's much better. We'll work with this version."
Yeah.
It was the exact same file, but because it was TIFF, it had to be better, right?
Well,
So
that's a funny story because about 25 years ago, when I was sending off a couple of scans to the publisher, they had said, "Oh, we can't accept JPEGs." Well, yeah, you can if they're uncompressed and they're large enough, because they were only going to be printing them at 200 dpi or something like that. So even uncompressed, that large size, they're still going to come out crisp. But it was the moniker of JPEG that was attached
yeah.
to the end of it, that some Yahoo at the other end of the department said, "Well, we can't accept that." Well, yeah, you can.
That's it. The checklist must be TIFF. Nope. Okay. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting is you can send them a really lousy TIFF and they'll say, okay. And you can send them a really lousy JPEG and they'll say,
Yeah.
no. So it's crazy.
Well, that's
Greg?
the other thing. It depends on who you're dealing with too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Greg?
Yes, I have two questions. And if they're too involved, we could probably discuss this offline. One is that I'm doing as you know, I'm writing a book about Hanna-Barbera records, and I have to send them files of album covers. And I'm assuming for publication, TIFF files are the best. And so far, I haven't heard back from them what that is, but that's the way I've been saving them. Is that correct?
Yeah, one thing that I didn't mention on this is that if you're scanning something that's previously been printed, you really want to look for something called a descreen option. If you take, for example, most magazines or things like an album cover and scan it, they're not consistent, like an actual slider negative would be, solid block of blue, green, red, or whatever. When you're looking at something that's been printed, it's combinations of blue, green, whatever dots really close together. If you
Right.
scan something just at, say, on my flatbed scanner, I scan something here at 2,400 dots per inch, I'm going to end up with 2,400 dots in an inch. If you go to the descreening option, it does the same thing that your eyesight does, which is it blends it into the combined color and gives you a nice smoother looking option. And like the Epson's really good. It can actually scan things. I think it has about 6 different settings for descreening for how, is it a fine art print? Is it a magazine? Is it a newspaper? Because you scan, for example, most newspaper pictures and scan them, they're going to look like crap. You're going to see every little dot that the newspaper printed them on. Descreen it, it turns it into what looks like a pretty passable black and white. So descreening is really essential for anything that's been previously printed, other than if it's an actual photograph, you don't need descreening. But if it's anything of coming out of a book, a magazine, anything like that, you're going to want to descreen it. And again, most places will want TIFF. They're generally too big to file on, send in an email. I just load them up to Dropbox or something and send them in that way. And that keeps most people happy. You had a second question?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing, but I can't scan. Well, I can't scan with my phone and on Photoshop. You know, I use a little paintbrush thing to paint out the record rings and the various little flaws. And I kick up the color a little bit, and I use the de-whiting, to make it whiter and brighter and things like that, and then I'll do the little bucket thing to just, sometimes splash the color in more. And that's really all I really know how to do. Is there, and that, like I say, this could be a bigger conversation with you and I, but is that really all I need to do, or is there a whole world of wonders that I'm missing?
No, for the most part, for doing something like a record album, particularly the label or anything like that, you're probably okay on it. What I suggest you do is you and I get together offline. You can send me some samples of what you're looking at. I might have the same album here because we will. I don't have a lot of Hanna-Barbera, but if we took the same Disney album, that you could do it on your end, I could do it on my end. We could play with it and see, what the two versions look like, and can do a comparison. So get in touch with me during the week, and we could see what we could work out to play with records.
Yeah, that'd be great. Almost everything I post on Jerry Beck's site has been tampered with by me. So if it looks good, then maybe I'm on the right track. But I've wondered about that. I'm going to watch your whole presentation again because I've learned a lot from this. Thank you.
Sure. By the way, I looked up and it says that if your screen sharing gets paused, you can exit Zoom and start again. So I guess it's not just me. Glenn?
I'm looking here at Amazon Nikon Super Cool Scan 5000 ED film scanner. Is that the one you'd recommend?
Yes, that's the one. That there's two of them. There's the Nikon 5 and the Nikon 5000. The Nikon 5 is a little slower. It's about 40% slower than the Nikon 5000, but they generally also go about half the price. There's a small difference between them. And I forget the amount of pixels of, the amount of depth they had for color, 60. I forget how many bits color one had versus the other. I cannot tell the difference in my own two eyes. The 5000 does scan a little bit faster. It was sold as a premium scanner because it also allowed you to take uncut rolls of 35mm film. They had a very expensive gadget that would feed it in, scan it all through the other side, and a very Jules Verne looking gadget at the end. It would, take it and rewind it and stuff. Or both of them will work with the slide feeder in it. If you had the choice, depending how many slides you have, the 5000 will save you time. The 5 will save you money. They're both pretty much identical. Like I said, a very small difference in color depth that I've not been able to detect. If you're interested in it, there's a fellow online. I can look up his thing. His fellow name is Frank Phillips. He tends to run around, buy cool scans, refurbish them, and then he sells them off with a warranty. And he does sell them on eBay. And I do not get a commission for it, but he's one of the guys I use to bring my stuff back to life when it starts, getting a little long in the tooth. Because again, you might buy a scanner that has very little use, very high use on it, and that's one of the troubles with it. Everyone you're going to get these every now and then somebody says, "Oh, I found one new in the box in the back of a warehouse," and they go for astronomical prices. But
this one is sitting at $3,577.
Yeah,
on Amazon.
Yeah, you can get it on eBay for about $1,500.
The 5,000.
The 5,000. Yeah. And you get about $1,500 on eBay. The 5 goes for about $1,000. So it depends on how much you want to save money or save time or whatever. I have here in my office 2 5s and a 5,000. If you ever want to borrow one of the 5s, Glenn, to check it out, let me know. We'll meet up for lunch someday, and I'd be glad to loan it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, see, I've got about 50 of the larger 140 carousel trays.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of the reason I like the idea of being able to put the Kodak thing on there and just let it run is just to get a rough. And then you go back and say, okay, the 5% or 3%, because, half of them are Yosemite and, nobody's going to care about that. So that's why. And then you take the time, to really do each one.
Right. Yeah, it's the trouble though. Then you got to spend $3,500 for one of those scanners.
Well, not if I can borrow yours.
Well, mine you got to take them out of the tray though. Yeah.
Oh, I know, but
yeah.
But no, I think I would, you know what I was just thinking? I'd just project them on the screen and shoot them with my cell phone. And that'll give me
Yeah,
a
it gives you an
reference.
idea. Yeah, it does give
It'll
you
give me a
reference.
reference. Anyway,
Well,
it's been a great presentation. I appreciate it.
well, hope it helps. And like I said, let me know your schedule. I'll drive up your way. We'll meet halfway someplace, and I'll loan you.
Yeah.
What I basically have is 2 production scanners and a spare, and I'd be glad to loan you the spare for a week or so.
But then I just checked my digital file here, and I've got over 50,000 still pictures, and we hardly ever look at them. You know, I
Yeah.
start questioning. My uncle used to say, the fun of photography is taking the picture. The next thing is the first time you see it. After that, it goes downhill very quickly. So-
It does. But I was just working on some pictures of Carol and the kids, and we were out in the poppy fields out near Lancaster. And I haven't looked at them in years, and I take them back out, and now I'm fixing the colors and scratches and all doing all that. And I was just remembering what a fun day it was. So occasionally I'll go back and look at them, and try to there's some people never look back. I mean, the people just never take pictures of anything, or they're too much trouble. They throw them away, and they go, "Don't throw them away. Just put them in a box in the garage. You can always throw them away later, but when they're gone, they're gone." But
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
at least these are good Kodachrome, so
yeah,
they're still pretty good. And about 1,000 dual 35 millimeter stereo.
yeah, those you have to do on a flatbed. You can do them on the Nikon. You can put them in the Nikon, but you do the left half, flip it around, do the right half. But then you have to, much more work to then make sure they're precisely lined up, because as you go into the scanner, they will shift a little up, a little down, whatever. So
Right,
you
right.
can do it, but basically, and what's really nice is for the Epson scanner, people make all sorts of mounts for it that Epson didn't make. You can buy a mount that will hold the old picture disc, the little crappy things Kodak sold for a while. You can get mounts for 110 film. You get mounts for stereo film, for all sorts of different things. That you take the Nikon, I keep saying Nikon, the Epson mount, put it in there, put this insert in it, and it holds your 110 or your disc film. There's some really nice stuff people do with their 3D printing.
Mhm.
Somebody asked me here in chat about D-screen option for textured paper. Yeah, back in the 30s, people really liked to use textured paper. And if you just do a scan of it on a regular flatbed scanner, you're going to end up showing that texture. If you try to use the Nikon or the digital ice on it, it's going to go bonkers, because it's measuring that infrared beam, and every time it hits a high or a low inside that textured paper, it's going to try to fix it for you. And this idea of fixing it for you is not good at all. Textured paper doesn't work at all well. Descreening can often help with textured paper. Depends on how textured the paper was. In some cases, what you can do is you can scan it into Photoshop and use something, and I'll probably mispronounce it, a Gaussian blur, and you can start blurring out some of the texture that's been put in there, and then you sharpen to take the blur back out. So it's a kind of counterintuitive thing. You blur the picture to take out the texture, and then you sharpen the picture to take out the blur. But it is a way to get the textured paper out of there. The other thing too that's really interesting with the flatbed scanner is if you have a picture that's creased, it can do a very nice job in many cases of taking out the crease. Or if you were like my mother, you would take a picture and write on the back in a ballpoint pen, Bill at age 8, and now it pushes its way through the paper. You stick it in the scanner and it sees the indentation of where my mom wrote, recognizes that as a defect, and it goes off and corrects it. Will not do it 100% of the time, but it can do a very nice job on fixing it. Where it won't help on most of these things is, God forbid, you get mold on your pictures. Mold tends to eat into the emulsion of a slide or a negative, or it tends to eat into the paper on a print, and you end up with a lot of spider web stuff. And if it's up in the sky, you can use the context aware tool in Photoshop and just do the sky, take it out. If it's somebody's got a giant blob of mold across their face, sometimes you're just going to have to live with it. The other thing I didn't have a chance because of screen sharing not being shareable right now anymore, is you can also take a picture of a sky that's totally blown out, or a sky that was very gray, like say smoggy or something. And you can do all sorts of things to make the picture more interesting. You can put clouds into it. You can change it to a sunset picture. There's some other really neat programs, either plugins to Photoshop. You can get a Photoshop brush of clouds, and you can just start painting clouds in the sky. So if we look at like Wayne's picture where he's on a night bright blue sky behind him, and you want to start adding some clouds in there, you can do it. What I always do is I save the original and then I save the doctored version. So if I ever want to go back to it without the clouds or whatever, but you can do some really amazing stuff with some of these other things I had hoped to demonstrate today. Maybe another time I can get screen sharing to work again, but you can really go back and do some amazing work on it. And I mentioned before, taking people out of pictures. If you go to my website, worldsfairphotos.com, there's a page in there with some hints and suggestions about Photoshop and scanners and that. And down at the bottom, I have some pictures of people, random people who I have no clue who they were. They were in somebody's picture I got. They were blocking my view of the New York State Pavilion, so I made them go away. Or they were blocking my view of the Astral Fountain or something, so I made them go away. You can do some amazing stuff in Photoshop, and some of the tools will do an amazing amount for you automatically. Like I said, stuff up in the sky, and just stuff that's distracting or whatever. Take it out. It's again, unless you're going for the Pulitzer Prize and they're going to get you for digital manipulation, it's your picture. You can do what you want, but there's some really neat other tools. What's also nice about Photoshop Elements and Corel Draw is that, or PaintShop Pro rather, is almost all of these filters that work in Photoshop will work in those two less expensive programs as well. Again, Photoshop can do all sorts of other odds and ends. There's some things called Photoshop Actions, where if you take a picture that really has next to no color, say like particularly underwater shots, you get down below 30 feet, you start losing a lot of your color in underwater shots. Amazingly, even in the submarine ride pictures from the theme parks, you can lose a lot of color. You can run a Photoshop Action, which Kodak had developed, and it starts restoring the pictures, not just as it would have been at the surface, but it's able to compensate for the lack of color that was in it when it was originally shot. And you can do all sorts of, again, you can, if you want to stick copyright notices on your picture, you can just have a one-click button that automatically sticks copyright, Bill Cotter 1993 or whatever on all your pictures. And again, Photoshop Elements, somebody was mentioning, get it on sale for around $70. The current version, which I think it's Photoshop CC 2021, is only in a subscription basis, but most of us will never ever use 99% of what's in there. So Photoshop Elements, Corel Photoshop, or Photo, whatever they call it, they work out really well. And if you're used to Photoshop and you use Photoshop Elements, you'll feel right at home in it. Again, for most of these, if you take the picture, and again, if I showed you before, pictures that you can do some, like the one I did of the print from Man in His World, the two fellows sitting on the rug. You can bring back most of the colors automatically right through the scanner, and if that's close enough, good enough, you can just move on and not have to do all the rest of it. But it's really much easier than people think it's worth, and it's not taking a lot of time. I want to ask one fellow that's on here, Steve Russo. I see you're connected. You do an awful lot of photography that I'm really impressed with the results. What I see you posting online. What particular tools do you use for your photo work? It says connecting to audio. He may not be able to answer. He's still, whatever he is, he must be in Greg Airbar zone for audio connecting. So Steve, we'll have to link up sometime, but I really like some of Steve's photography I've seen post. So yeah, again, this was just not to try to teach you Photoshop. Again, pretty well self-learned or YouTube tutorial learned, or sometimes take out the book and that sort of thing. But the nice thing about it is you do the scan, you can't ruin your picture. You can always go back to where you were. It's very easy to do the thing. And I just encourage people to do it. A lot of people have shoe boxes full of photos sitting there in the closet. If you're Glenn, you got trays and trays and trays of pictures, which I've been trying to encourage him to scan so he could show us Epcot being built and some of these other things. So again, it's easier to do than not. You see so many people just take a picture on Facebook, particularly like the Vintage Disneyland group. They'll scan it, and it's really a prize picture of them as they're me and my dad when my first trip to Disneyland at age 7, and it looks like crap. I'll sometimes try to help them out and said, hey, if you don't mind, I just did a little quick whatever, and it's astonishing in 30 seconds what you can do. Import it, sometimes just hit autocorrect in Photoshop and then export it right back out, and the thing looks so much better. So and again, I wish I had stock in Nikon. I wish I could get them to make these scanners all over again. I'd be plugging them left and right, but they are great tools, and so are the Optima scanners and some of the others. So appreciate folks joining. I don't know what we're going to do next Saturday. Maybe we'll look at Glenn's pictures that he'll have restored in my borrowed scanner. But
yeah, right. You keep thinking
Hey,
that.
Bill.
Yeah, Greg.
Oh, Bill.
Yes.
Oh, just one little suggestion. Since you fight crime all the time and you enjoy photography, there's a TV show you may want to watch with Charles Bronson called Man with a Camera from the late 50s.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to find. It's everywhere. It's on YouTube and it's on Roku and Tubi, and so it's really easy to find. It's on DVD too, but you don't really have to pay to see it. But we all these early guitars are on.
Yeah, so that's what I end up.
Want to tune in for that.
I'll keep an eye for it. That's what I end up doing, watching a lot of old TV shows. I watch hardly anything on TV that's on these days. I mean, if somebody offered me $1 million to tell me one show that was on ABC on a Sunday night, I couldn't do it. I could tell you what was on in 1964, Voyage Bottom of the Sea. But today, I'm watching stuff, so I appreciate the lead for it. So yeah, I mean, somebody suggested one day I could do all the accident pictures that I go to, and we could look at smashed cars and crushed trucks and things. That gets old real fast. So, but yeah, again, appreciate folks joining again. My intention here is encourage you to take stuff out, start restoring it. So Beth, go get your photo albums and bring them back. And it's like I said, I find it very relaxing, and it's also great fun to go back to things. Particularly when you zoom them in. Like I was just looking at a picture yesterday. And again, I was going to show it today, but I can't share it. And it was some people getting on a streetcar at Main Street at Disneyland. And okay, it's a nice picture and fix it. Oh, whoa, as I zoom in the back, they're actually building the house of the future, the Monsanto house. And it's got scaffolding and all the work going on in the back. And, you just look at it as a little slide. You might not notice it when you zoom it in. There's guys standing on the scaffolding building the house of tomorrow. And I can't think of too many pictures of the house of tomorrow being built. So, that's the sort of thing you find all sorts of neat little fun things and tricks and tips in there. So enjoy it. And I hope we got to see Carol's baby picture. So she hasn't seen some of those in years, and she's probably going to kill me for putting it up there. But I'm working on her family photos, and it's great to see some of her. She has some really good family friends who are like second parents to her, and it's great to see them in their younger days and everybody enjoying their times up in the mountains and stuff. So it's fun to turn the clock back on some of these things. So I thank folks for joining. I hope everybody, for the folks back east, I hope the rain has stopped. I saw pictures of Long Island. Carlos, did you get flooded in Connecticut? Yeah. I got to get in touch with my brothers and see if they're now living in a houseboat or something on Long Island. I didn't realize just how much rain they got. I saw the pictures of the water in the New York subway system and that. And then out here, we're drier and hotter than hell. So build a pipeline, sell us some water, please. Well, we'll be back next week. And again, if, as I mentioned from time to time, if people do have a particular topic that they would like to present on or talk about, I do know vintage railroads or something that has come up, and I've been going through my pictures trying to see if I have enough of them, and I'll see what we can get. Mike, do you have your hand up there? Or are you just waving? If you have something, you can take yourself off mute. Guess not. Okay. Well, again, thanks
I
everybody
didn't
for.
have anything, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I saw the hand kind of moving with the virtual background. I wasn't sure if you were just stretching or, waving your hand. So.
I threw my dog toy.
Okay. Well, our dogs have come and gone a few times. I was looking at my wife's picture and the dogs walk in and out, and then the mail lady came by, and now my daughter came home. So I'm looking at the screen, and I get a lot of dog action going over there too. At the beginning of the talk, the dog decided, I'm going to come in and I'm going to sleep on your feet. So it's not disconcerting at all when you're suddenly talking and boom, the dog, it's got the whole house, 4,000 square feet, and it has to sit right on your feet. So.
Say, Bill,
Yeah.
before we go, you had mentioned as one of the programs, GIMP earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't have a program and don't want to spend, $99, $79 for anything else that's on the market right there, I'd suggest go download GIMP. Its current version is actually really very good. It's got a lot of features in it. It uses layers, which is extremely helpful in what you need really for photo manipulation. And it's free. It's up at version 2.10 right now, 2.109 or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of people love it. I looked at it once and never got back to it, not because anything I didn't like, just a lack of time. There's also one thing I did want to show, and I can't because of screen share, about being able to colorize old black and white pictures. There's some really neat free programs out there that you can take an old black and white picture, it's 39 World's Fair, turn it into color. Some of them do a terrible job. They look like old postcards. But some of them are really nice, and you can do some really great manipulation. So if you have black and white pictures, if you're a family from way back when, and you can run it through some of these things. It's, again, free stuff, just amazing.
That's a whole nother subject in itself. And actually, I do a lot of colorization of black and white photos. And there's a couple of ways to do it. And I see a lot of people who I believe do it the wrong way. And they just, they put the cart before the horse, and they really don't need to do it that way. But one of the things about, there's a lot of videos on YouTube right now with regard to GIMP and basic tutorials on how to use it and how to get started. So, and like I said, I use Paint Shop Pro and I love it. So, I've used GIMP, but I'm just stuck with Paint Shop Pro just because I've been using it for a long time, and so I don't, need to go anywhere else. But I'd suggest give it a try. The only thing, the worst thing you can do is just uninstall it if you don't like
throw it away.
But throw it away. But it's gotten to the point where it's actually a very, very good photo manipulation program, particularly with its use of layers and but even with colorization. Like I said, that's a whole nother subject. I could talk about that.
Well, maybe someday you should talk about it. I'd like to see more and learn more. It's actually,
Bill, I've got a box of old Ansel Adams pictures I'm thinking about colorizing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And that one, I'd really like to get the picture of Hernandez, but it's got that annoying moon in the background that I really want to make go away too. Yeah.
Bill, have you
Ansel
played
Adams.
with the, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
Have you played with the neural filters in Photoshop? It has a fairly reasonable colorize filter there.
I played with it, but enough only to get started to say that's something I got to get back into. There are some really neat tools. What's interesting, Baron mentioning GIMP, get back to it real second. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's bad. Like I mentioned 2 weeks ago when we did the film thing about 8mm film, the tool that I use to stabilize the shutter and shaking of the film, there are some that are in, for example, Adobe Premiere Pro, and the version that's for free in Virtual Dub is, to me, 10 times better than the version in the commercial software. So sometimes you get hobbyists that just spend massive amounts of time of their lives just building these really kick-ass tools, and then they give it away. They want the people to benefit from it, and it's really great. So again, just because something is free doesn't mean that it's bad. There are a lot of free Photoshop filters, free Photoshop actions, again, that work in these other programs as well. So there's all sorts of things you can do to, enhance your pictures and change them. And people do all sorts of things. There's features to make them look like oil paintings or pixelated paintings or pointillism and stuff that I never see much point in. But you can have a lot of fun with it. And, again, you can, change pictures, morph them, change them. And there's actually some really interesting things like in Photoshop. If you have a picture somebody took of say a sign along the side of a highway, and it says that, this marker marks where absolutely nothing happened in 1897, and it's shot at an angle, you can get in there and you can warp the perspective of it to raise it so it's looking head on at you, that you're no longer looking down at a 45-degree angle. But you can do it so that you don't end up losing. You can squish and squash, make it wider, narrow, or whatever. You can do some amazing stuff. You can't do what you see on CSI, which was like, hey, what's the backside of that car look like, and just rotate the car around and see the license plate. I mean, we have people come to the police station all the time. I got a picture of the car. Well, yeah, but there's no front license plate. Well, can't you rotate it? They do it on CSI, and no, we can't do that. But
Bill, if you remember, about 6-8 months ago, maybe, you had posted a monochrome picture of the futuristic car, GM's car, from New York World's Fair.
Mhm.
And I had taken it and colorized it, not realizing that there were plenty of color photos out there, and I knew there were. But at the moment, it was just a quick idea saying, oh, okay, let me take this picture that Bill had posted, that throw a little color into it. And you had come back and just said, well, that's pretty darn close to the original. And I thought, well, okay, I really didn't remember what the car looked like, but I had modified it where some of the neon signage up there where I thought maybe should have been a little highlighted. I made it in
Mhm.
pinkish red, and I made the car in blue, and the base certainly was I don't know if it was white, but I kind of made it into a metallic silver thing. And it was, for me, it was relatively simple to do, but it involved using layers, and it involved applying color to the layers and not necessarily painting on the layers, which is what a lot of these people do. Is they'll go ahead and paint, and then they apply the filters to the layer in order to lay that paint down. But it's such a long-term process, and whereas all you need to do is, I mean, if you really look what television is, what color television is all it does is they're just applying chroma, to a black and white image, or they're removing the chroma from a color image in order to get black and white. So all you're doing is you're just putting chroma back, onto a picture. And if you do that by layers and adding just chroma color, and I generally use a red and a blue and a yellow and a brown, and just mix it, and that's really all you need to do. But
Yeah, what's interesting is you see so many people, as you mentioned, they just paint a color. Like if you look at my picture on the screen now, the top of my forehead is lighter than down at my chin. So if somebody just went and painted all one color, it's going to look unnatural. There's a fellow, again, Mike Clark is on the thing. There's a fellow that he, and I love the work, a guy that takes a lot of the old Lost in Space episodes or some of the old Jerry Anderson shows and does colorization of some of the images, and just astonishing, because again, you have to get it that even like looking Dan Sherlock has a blue shirt on. Well, there's different blues in a shirt, dark blue where is a fold and a lighter blue on the sleeve and everything. You paint it all one color, it just looks like an old colorized lobby card outside a movie theater or something like that.
Right.
Excuse me. So yeah, it is a real nuance, and again, I've played with it and had fun, and I took a picture, for example, one of my favorite Disney shows, Zorro, and a picture of Guy Williams, and I knew what color his original costume was in. Did the first computerized colorization, and okay, now I know what the real costume was because I have a reference photo of it. I can, bring it up, bring it down, do whatever to it. And others, I have no idea. And that's when they did the colorization of the Disney Zorro series. They did not go back. It was done by another group outside the studio, did it for them, and they didn't go back to the archives and get the exact right suit. So Don Diego's costume was not quite the right one or whatever. If they did it today and were able to go to the archives and get the costumes, keeping in mind that the fabric may have faded over 50 years or something, so you got to take that into account. They still did, I thought, a really, really great job of colorizing the Disney Zorro series, which they did it for the overseas market because they wanted to syndicate it, and nobody overseas will watch any black and white TV anymore at all, it seems. So they colorized it, did a really great job. The purists went absolutely crazy because Don Diego's suit was more of a tan, less of a brown or whatever. To me, if it sold overseas and it kept Zorro alive, that was great. But today, what you can do if you have the original master is pretty astonishing. So, someday, Baron, let's talk and see. I'd love to see more of your work. I've been impressed by what I have seen of it.
I'll do this too, but I still owe you I'm still looking for it. I still can't find them. My work on the World's Fair. I mean, my work on at Walt Disney World, and I told you I would find this and do a presentation for you, and I still haven't been able to find it, let alone put together a presentation for it. So now I'll owe you two. I'll owe you that one, and maybe in the interim, but by the time I get that together, I'll do something for you for, basic colorization using a colorization program. What I'll do is I'll either post them or I'll send you a couple of examples that I've done of basic stuff on the Facebook page, to give you an idea.
Great. And Jim Brown, I'll try to get in touch with this week. We have a couple things we've been knocking about. I tell you, it's been really hectic out here. People know I volunteer with the LAPD, and I've been filling in for somebody that unfortunately is out with lung cancer treatment. So right now I'm putting about 30 hours a week in on my part-time job. So it's just kind of filled up with other stuff. But I'll try to find some time, particularly if it's hot. I'll find a reason to stay inside and make a phone call. So appreciate it. So thanks, everybody. And okay, let me jot your number down, Jim, there. Thanks, before it goes away. 1 second. 97.
And then maybe what we need to do is a presentation for Beth.
For Beth?
On stereoscopic imagery, on how to create it. Simple.
Yeah, she's been taking a bunch of pictures out in cemeteries and places like that. So looking forward to get that little viewer and be able to take a look at those. So,
well, you're still here, Beth. Have you been taking stereo pictures? Do you have a stereo adapter, or did you get something?
Yeah, when we had one of the presentations on stereo views, I had asked a question in the chat, and Dan Sherlock on the call had suggested a viewer that attaches to, or a lens that attaches to the camera. So I got one of those, and I've had a couple of opportunities to take pictures in different places.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, the one I have looks a little bit different than the one that Dan's holding up, but I have taken some stereo pictures. I've shared some of them on Facebook. I finally got some viewers in. I told a few people that, if they would send me their address, I'd send them a viewer. And it's the little viewer I have looks like this. There's just a little cardboard. It's just a cardboard viewer, but it pops out. And it's got
have you posted your pictures on? Have you posted them on Facebook?
I posted a few just to a small group on Facebook.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
But with this viewer, you can just look at them on the screen, and I found that it works pretty well. So I had shared a few pictures from Oakland Cemetery here in Atlanta. The cemetery was nice because it had a lot of flowers, but a lot of statuary as well. So it had some nice opportunities to really explore the 3D views. So Bill, I do have a viewer to send you, and to send a few other people too. So it's been a fun thing. So thank you, Dan, for sharing that. It's been a
Beth,
fun activity for me.
I might suggest, I don't know if you've ever tried it, is if you can learn to free view, which means you're just looking at the pictures and you
cross your eyes. Yeah.
It takes a little practice. It takes a little practice, but you can work it. If you've ever played with those old Magic Eye books where you see a picture in the haze of things, I can do it now with big stereo cards and everything.
Yeah.
lie in bed watching those that you're talking about on my phone, and I can just click through them. I mean, once you learn how to do it,
Right.
Yeah, but
It's-
when you do it too much, you end up looking like Ben Turpin. Look him up.
Oh, I know who he is.
Yeah, Dan.
My preferred method is to actually do a cross-eye view.
Cross-eye, yeah.
And then you can actually, if you're not very good at free view, you can put your finger up and sort of get it to where they merge at the right distance and use your fingers
Mhm.
like an
Yeah.
aid.
Yeah,
But
I think
you get full color.
most of
and
us
it
prefer
produces
the,
nice
par-
monitor and a
anyway.
lot of nice aspects to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, was that a Nimslo?
Yes, which has 4 lenses. It used to do a lenticular 3D photo. There was a company still developing it and making lenticular. I'm not sure they're still doing it, but you can actually get a stereo pair, and you can do like 1 and 3 would be a regular stereo. You can go 1 and 4 to get a hyper stereo for stuff further away, or 1 and 2, which is like for a close up, and you can actually adjust the spacing to give the preferred thing, but it takes 4 half-size photos. And as long as you request developing without splitting it into individual things, you just get the unsplit developed roll. You can get stereo pairs, and adjust to whichever set you like.
I have to look into that. We had a fellow friend of mine, Bruce Gordon, worked at Imagineering, and Bruce really got into it, and he bought a bunch of Nimslos and gave them out to people, and very proud of it. And then they went out of business the next week, so his timing was absolutely excellent. So I think he had bought a whole bunch of film and everything else. And poor Bruce was the cutting edge technology guy. He had the first Sony robotic dog and was really happy with that. And of course, Sony then said, "Oh, no more robotic dogs." And he was a new adapter and everything. I mean, I was always let Bruce buy something, and it was still in business a year later, I would consider it. But he would go off and just buy every new toy that came out. And I remember him being very upset with Nimslo after he bought them and they went out of business.
Pam, tell us about the viewer. I mean, about your adapter.
Well, this is the lens that I have. So it just attaches to my camera.
Okay.
And then it's got the 2 lens caps here, and it's got a little slider on the bottom where you can adjust for the distance. So the closest with this one is about 1.5 meters, and it goes out to infinity. But Dan, you mentioned about 30 feet was about the max, and that's what I'm seeing too. If I try to take pictures of anything much further than that, you just kind of lose the 3D effect. So I'd say anywhere between like 5 and 25 feet has been the optimal for me. But it just attaches right on the camera that I already had. It was about $165, so not terribly expensive. And I haven't even tried printing any pictures yet. I've just looked at them on my laptop with the viewer, and it's worked really well. I have a really nice like antique stereoscope, so eventually I want to print some out that I can put in there, but I just haven't even tried it yet.
Yeah, they come with mounts for Nikon, Canon, a whole bunch of different ones, and then you have to make sure whether you're getting a full frame or 3/4 sensor, that sort of thing. But if you go on
That's right.
If you go on Amazon and search for it and put in your camera model, it'll tell you pretty much which one you need. Dan?
Well, Beth, yours is shooting half frame, isn't it? So on a full frame, you're getting left side and right side. So it's actually 2 vertical shots, right? Right.
Yeah,
Now,
Bill, if I'm able to share, I could pull up a picture here in a minute and share what one looks like.
Well, maybe it will work for you. We'll see. Hang on. I'll make you co-host and you should be able to share. I'll be very jealous if your screen share works.
Let's see.
Chris might work after she cuts off
Can
too.
you see that?
You said it.
yeah, Dan, I agree with you.
Are you
I
able to
find
see it?
cross viewing a little bit easier. Okay. Oh, okay. Let's see here. I can't get my eyes close enough.
That's not cross-eye.
No, it's not cross-eyed.
Yeah.
It's parallel.
Yeah,
but
I
I
have to
can't.
flip it for cross-eyed. It's just parallel, right?
Can you flip it?
I haven't seen a way to easily flip it. I mean, I could just cut it in half and flip it, but
Okay.
that's not a choice that I had coming, just right out of the
Out of the software. right.
lens.
Yeah, out of the-
Yeah. Let me see. I can show you some others too.
Yeah, I can't get my eyes.
See, these are just all from Oakland Cemetery. Let me flip through to some of the others. I thought this was a nice one. It really showed off the 3D effect.
Zoom my screen down some.
Are you still able to see that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to do this again with the viewer.
Okay. I still
Yeah, so we just walked around Oakland Cemetery, one morning a couple Saturdays ago, and just tried some different shots from different
Oh, yeah.
distances. You can see
that looks
this is,
good.
Atlanta, city of Atlanta in the background. Oakland's right in downtown Atlanta, so.
Yeah, that one's good.
I'm going to see real quick if my sharing works now. 1 second.
Yeah, let me stop.
So
Oh, that's a
here-
nice one.
Share screen. Okay, Photoshop. I just wonder if it's going to work. Nope, it's paused.
You need to reset.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Well, great. I am also working on an Expo, right with you 1 second, Dan. I'm working on an Expo 70 presentation. By the way, we did Expo 75 in Okinawa a few weeks ago. And somebody asked me, about how come there were so many black and white pictures? And I said, oh, because color ones are so hard to get. Well, I just finished scanning and restoring about 160 color pictures from Expo 75. So maybe someday we'll go back there and view that in color as well. So sorry, Dan.
One suggestion I have for taking stereo photos is I routinely take at least 2 or 3 photos of the same scene, just in case I accidentally moved or got a blur or something like that. Also, in some cases, there'll be like a pole in the way of something, and I go like, I should have been slightly further left. So when I take 2 photos, I lean on my right foot, take a photo, lean on my left foot, take a photo, and they're spaced a little further apart so you can get stereo pairs. If I'm photographing like Yosemite Valley where everything's far away, I'll do the same thing, but I'll move a few feet until I get, 5 feet apart, and I get a nice
Right.
photo that way. But if you're going to take 2 photos anyway, just lean on your left foot, lean on right foot, and you can get a stereo pair for free.
They call that the cha-cha method.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I have a ton of 64 World's Fair stereo stuff I have to get around to doing. So again, it takes twice as long or 3 times as long as a regular one, but I'll get around to doing that, and I'll take our glasses out and go back to that someday. So thanks all for.
Maybe you can give us a presentation on scanning things like that.
On scanning stuff like that. Oh, God. I'd share it to my screen, but no. So again, thanks everybody for joining. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we will see you next week for something out in the wonderful world of fun. So take care.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you again.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Phil.